the correct link. And then when you finally do get in, you can hear everybody, but they can't hear you. And then there's 25 minutes or so of, can you hear me now? Followed by awkward silence. And then I think blank is with us, followed by another awkward silence. And then after an hour or so, you get roll call finished and when you're going to meet again, and the meeting ends. Don't let your online meeting turn you and your nerves into this poor soul. Kevin Connolly, our national secretary, captured on camera in the wilds of Kansas City. He was in great shape until he ran out of Monster Energy drink. This could happen to you if you are not ready and willing to be flexible and learn about how online meetings work. And I think Kevin will probably kill me after this presentation, but I just couldn't help myself. As PRPs and as teachers, of course, we talk about the body of knowledge. These are the things that I'd like to cover with you this evening. I'm not going to read it, just going to keep trucking. It's here in the slide deck for you to take with you when we're done. So I guess the first question is, do you need a meeting room? What sort of meeting are you going to have? Is it something that you could do by email? Do you want to hear each other's collaboration in real time? Do you want to look at one another while you do it? Do you want to share files and documents? Do you want to collaborate and rewrite those documents as you go to create an end product? All of those questions need to be answered in the background before you decide what to do. I'll say that I had an excellent experience with the DC Registered Parliamentarian Unit a couple of weeks ago. They had a meeting of 30 folks for the registration exam review. It was the largest meeting I had conducted, and there were lots of photographs. Everyone could see each other. And I was struck most importantly by the camaraderie. Of course, there was a lot of talk about Robert's Rules in brief and answering questions, but being able to see one another and talk with one another seemed to be as important as the material. But if I could call out 3 folks that I've had meeting with before, the pricing committee, Joyce Brown Watkins, Carl Knorr, and Carrie Dixon, sometimes they just need to talk to one another, and they might be able to use a different platform rather than having to get into an Adobe Connect room of this size and complexity. So the first question you should ask yourself is, what sort of meeting room do you need? We have a committee decide that. We decided as a board. Good question. Colette Trohan always says committees start with a question to be answered. So perhaps it is something that a committee in your organization would decide. Or you may, in these times, just get all together and say, how are we going to do this? See what your bylaws will allow and move ahead. The first platform I'd like to cover this evening is the one in which we are currently embedded. Adobe Connect is, for all intents and purposes, at least in my own mind, as the disclaimer, one of the gold standards of electronic platforms. It has the ability to allow people to interact and share and watch video and take part in polling, and you can play music, and there are even games you can play in the lobby while you wait, and it can be recorded and parsed and all sorts of things. And so if you're looking for a large venue or a place to have a complex meeting like this one, this is probably the way to go. And I say that for a number of reasons. Each box that you see here, the Whitaker content page where my slide deck is, chat 4 that says everyone, attendees, all of those are separate pods that must be built from scratch. And each frame we've gone through this evening, and I'm going to mess with the slide deck in minutes. I don't want Chairman Harris to have an aneurysm because the slide's going to change. This lobby slide was made significantly differently from the Q&A slide, which we'll have at the very end. So each one of these has to be built in advance in a specific order. And if anything moves, there are people who have permissions to slide elements of the deck around. And sometimes that can be a bit off-putting to a presenter. There are lots of bells and whistles. I'll quote one of my mentors, Lucy Hicks Anderson. She would call it a frou-frou, doodad. The doodads can get in the way, but they can also be really helpful. The second thing I want to point out about Adobe Connect that's different from a couple of the other platforms is that we NAP have a 100-seat, 2-host license. And that means that once we hit 100 people, each person that we add thereafter charges us 1 minute. So if we added 10 more people over an hour, that would be 10 times 60, that's 600 minutes. So if we add the people that are currently in our queue, 69 people times 60 minutes, that would be 3,600 burst minutes. And a package of 1,500 burst minutes will cost about $750. So if we were to have everybody join us, some of these webinars would cost in the $2,000 range to produce. However, the complexity of the platform necessary requires that we have a cap for live attendance, but that we can record it and distribute it thereafter in its entirety so that people can consume it in wherever they wish. So being able to present it live with everyone able to interact is a downside. However, we can counteract that with the ability to save it and then rebroadcast it. Finally, Adobe Connect allows us to export that video in a number of ways. It can be done in a proprietary format, so that it isn't able to be copied and shared without maintaining intellectual property, or it can be turned into an MP4 file and just moved around. So finally, I'll say this: the content hereafter, because every webinar that we've had that's been recorded since time immemorial, and I'll say 2014, and would ask anyone online who can correct me if I'm wrong there to do so, is on the adobeconnect.com page. And we can get a URL sent to you and you can see every recording. But we lock those down so that we can maintain the intellectual property on those elements, and sometimes we offer those on sale for folks to view as they prepare for clients or prepare for credentialing, etc. So Adobe Connect pluses can handle a lot of things, can be tweaked ad infinitum, lots of sharing capability. Downside can be a bit costly and very cumbersome to set up in advance and use. So that's my Adobe Connect spiel. I enjoy the platform. It has worked well for us, and it is what the Webinar and Technical Support Committee have used for many years, but we have moved toward a different platform simply because of cost and things that I'll get to as we move on. I see a note here from Jasmine Mason. Will this be sent out after for rewatch? You bet. You bet. Approximately cost for 100 seats. Excellent question. It's changed a bit. Leave that question. I'll come back to it. GoToMeeting. As I mentioned, I am a green gaveler. I think it's important to point out where your memberships lie. I'm a Kappa Sigma. When I was in college, and our founding fathers in the 1870s were hesitant to admit too many people from different states for whatever reason. I am an NAP member first and foremost, but I'm also a Green Gaveler electronic unit, and we use GoToMeeting for our recurring business and educational meetings. It is essentially as pliable as Adobe Connect. I have never used it as a platform personally, but I have interacted in the platform as both a participant and a presenter. There are many backdoor items that happen behind the scenes that you all don't see, that the end user does not see. For example, in Adobe Connect right now, on the right-hand side of my screen, I can see the presenter chat, which is the host and the presenters, and we're talking about administrative items in the background. I can see the 58 people who are still trying to get in, and the layout just looks a bit different. Also, there are technical support tickets that have been rolling into the email box. I'm looking at 13 at the moment since we started. So the background has to be handled as well. If you're presenting, GoToMeeting and Adobe Connect can be a little cumbersome to try and manage all of those elements at once, which is why you'll notice we have 8 technical support hosts this evening, because there is a great deal to manage. Yes, I see Lori Luckenach has said NAP can have up to 2 meetings at a time. That's correct. Sometimes we have had webinars in one account and PRC, professional recertification courses, happening in another at the same time. Thank you for that, Lori. So GoToMeeting is what Green Gavel uses. I have never personally had an issue with it. It's very user-friendly, and I say this perhaps a bit blindly, but my sense is that it can be as difficult to set up sometimes as Adobe Connect can. But our current president, Beth Sapp James, and Lucy Anderson, our immediate past president, have always done that with skill and grace. And so I think it's just a bit of as much of a learning curve as Adobe Connect would be. I think the license there, as you see on the screen, says 101 max. I believe Miss Lucy has a larger license than that, but each one of these platforms allows you to purchase licensing platforms that meet your needs. I'll get to that in the Adobe, or rather the Zoom Connect element, because it's the one I have the most experience with, and I think it would play out more for an association or a unit who's not looking to spend several $100s for a license. So GoToMeeting, pluses, it's very stable, easy to work, easy to interact in. Downside, at least from my perspective, I've not built something in it like this before, but my sense is that the learning curve and complexity is similar. And so now we come to Zoom. And I was going to sing that song from the old 70s TV show on PBS. This particular screenshot is of my computer, and it was taken on the 19th of October. And this meeting was with the board of directors and Kay Cruz, who's giving us an overview of the University of Wisconsin correspondence course for membership into NAP, which is how I got my membership exam, was taking that 13-part course. As you can see, there are several people present along the top. Our good friend Carl Knorr has poppies in his background. What you see behind me is the flag of the President of the United Federation of Planets, and behind Wanda is her new office in her new retirement home in sunny Florida. Zoom allows you to look at each other without eating up a great deal of bandwidth, but also as a participant, you can make those determinations for yourselves by default. Where here, if you were to try and start your webcam as a participant, that wouldn't be a thing, nor could you just unmute yourself by default. Now, Zoom can be locked down the same way, but it was designed for a different user set. It was designed for people to be able to interact and collaborate, where I think Adobe Connect is more of a presentation classroom setup. From September 7th until January 30th, it was the administration's goal to meet with every standing and special committee that was appointed by the president and approved by the board of directors. In the discussion during the election in Las Vegas, and as the administration got started, President Allen said, we'll be transparent and we will all talk with one another and we'll all know what we're doing. To that end, she held 47 meetings between September 7th and January 30th. On Columbus Day, she had 8. We started at 8:30 in the morning and went till 10 o'clock at night. And we used Zoom for all of them, so we could see one another and they could see her and she could see them and they could talk and voice their concerns and talk about work plans, and it was flawless. We did not have any the thing didn't shut down on us. There was no real connection issue. We may have some audio drop out. That's from a personal user connection element that the platform is not responsible for. But we were able to share documents and share screens and collaborate, and the goal was met within the first 60 days of the administration. All of the standing and special committees had been met with, and they'd had their work plans, and it was accomplished through Zoom. Mostly, and I say this because those of you who know me well know that I like two things that are peppy and things that are cheap, and I'm incredibly cheap. A professional Zoom license, which is 100 seats, 2 hosts, no time limit, 10 gigs of recording on the cloud, a call-in number, and a couple of other items, is I pay $9.95 a month. And that's incredible for a platform of this magnitude to be able to handle our organizational's foundational structural meetings for a biennium without flaw speaks volumes, at least to me, about the value for money in this platform. Now you'll notice there are no bells and whistles. There's not a pod for this and a pod for that. My good friend Lori pointing out 200 Canadian a year. It's what they call WYSIWYG for those of us who were back from the 80s. What you see is what you get, pretty much. But most of the time, that's what you need. If you need to share a PowerPoint presentation, we can do that. During the coronavirus event, I will point out for those who are here that the Webinar and Tech Support Committee, in collaboration with President Allen and Vice President Sims, will allow any association or unit to use our Zoom credentials for whatever unit or association meeting you would like to have. I'll be glad to give my credentials to anybody or schedule a meeting for you and sit in on it and let you all work. And I'll sit in the background and lurk, do laundry, etc. Because we all have professional licenses, and it's perhaps a little easier in this time of immediate need to meet versus trying to work out with your association or unit how it will be paid for if we just say, here you go. So from my part, and I won't speak for the president, the vice president, or Chairman Harris, though I know they are capable of speaking for themselves a little later. If your association or unit would like to meet, we'll be glad to give you my credentials so that you can have your meeting whenever you'd like. Again, Sunday I'm hosting the DC registered unit again for their meeting and educational meeting, and it went off without a hitch. I see a question here. What determines the cost, Ms. Gamblin? The cost is how many seats you can have and how many hosts you can have. Security, an issue with Zoom. Mr. Dixon, please hold that question because I'd like to get to that in just a second. I want to point out the next slide for me was the zenith of the platform. This picture was taken on, I believe it was the 4th of April, at the beginning of the Electronic Association of Parliamentarians annual meeting. As you can see on the right-hand side there, it says 1 of 3. There were 59 participants. We had a blast. President or Vice President Bessat James created a Jeopardy game that we were able to play for almost an hour, and different people were called on, and there were different dollar amounts. And you see John Berg there of Washington, a 3rd row, 3rd column. He's got what looks like the Serengeti plane behind him. Evan Lemoyne, our president, was in Paris BST, Bev Tatham, she looked like she was at the Golden Gate Bridge. Aaron Taggart, one of our hosts this evening, looks like he was either at the California Sunset or elsewhere. I had the green or the EAP logo behind me. As a user, you are able to make those tweaks on your own, whereas in Adobe Connect, not so much. And that's the other reason why I like this. People that feel engaged, to have a little ownership in what they're projecting, at least in my experience, and I don't have any empirical knowledge to back this up, but my hunch is that when people feel more invested, they want to interact more, and that would lead to a better meeting. And I think Carl Knorr this time, who's the master of backgrounds, by the way, looks like he's in the Sistine Chapel. It changes every time he's on. It's hysterical. By comparison, the next slide is actually the world government, so to speak. I see the Prime Minister of India, the Prime Minister of Japan, President Trump, Prime Minister Trudeau, the Chancellor of Germany, President Xi Jinping of China, and they're all using Zoom. So if the G20 can use Zoom, I feel like NAP and EAP can use Zoom fairly effectively. I was really impressed by that everybody just looked like we did, except we were having a big goofy time and telling dumb jokes. But there were as many superstars. So there's Margaret Wynne and Paul McClintock and Weldon Merritt, people have been around forever. And just like on this next one, King Saudi Arabia and President of Italy. It's the same thing. You get to see all the fun, famous people and chime into the conversation. In my opinion, that's as important as the educational material, the ability to interact, to build the community and get something from one another. This link that I provided you is, I hate to say levity, but it really isn't. The article says that people that have been working from home have been doing things like taking meetings from the bed, where you just prop your computer up on your lap and lay back on the pillow and turn the camera on, and whatever we see, we see. And why I will say that I meet with my cohort, Samara Harris, usually every other Sunday, and we are usually either in chair or in bed. May not be the best thing for your professional meetings, your clients, or for classes. So those five tips are worth taking a look at if you get a chance. I need to look at Angela's just for a second, and I'll be right back with you. Okay. Free conference call. I hope that every person on the meeting tonight knows about freeconferencecall.com. It's free, which you know I love because I'm cheap. And I've had this account since 2017. Our Tar Heel E unit uses it. If you just need to talk to one another and you are a small unit and finances are the concern, there you go. This is your answer. You can talk to one another, provided the bylaws allow it. I feel like I need to say that asterisk, even though all of us are parliamentarians and know that that's an element that needs to be consulted. But if the bylaws allow for you all to speak by phone, to have your meetings, well, this is the free way to do it, and it's very, very easy. Just like Zoom, you can send out an email that has all the login information and what to do, and you can record it for playback later, etc. But this is the baseline. I hope no one will take this offensively, but this is the 1987 Yugo of platforms. It'll get you from A to B, and that's really all you need. And also, it's a lot of fun until your friends see you driving it. Just kidding on that one. But it's worked for me, and we've used it in North Carolina a couple of times, and it's worked really well. Keep this in mind. If cost is a thing. Now, this next slide is my attempt at levity, and one of my dearest friends is an active duty captain in the Army, and he uses the word Merca as almost an expletive, something to drive something home. And as I present to you my thoughts about electronic meeting etiquette, I want you to use the letters MURICA as your mnemonic for my thoughts about electronic meeting etiquette and even electronic meeting interaction. So the first rule, the first letter M, is the one we should always remember, and that is mute your mic. Mute your mic. I can't say it enough. Mute your mic. If you get onto a green gavel meeting, we have sometimes 100 people, and there's 1 or 2 people that have a non-duplex mic unmuted, and their husband is complaining about the lateness of dinner in the background, and the echo of him reverberates through every speaker. And so what I can say to you more than anything, as a friend and as a colleague, is please, for the love of Francis, mute your mic. There are special rules in certain electronic associations. I'll step out as parliamentarian and say, even though I may get slapped in the back of the head, EAP has a standing rule that says if your mic is unmuted and it is causing a problem, we will mute you without your consent so that the meeting can continue. So just remember, keep your mic muted. U stands for unmute your mic when you're ready to speak, and then go back to rule 1. What you don't want is for someone to say, and now I'm happy to introduce to you Dave Whitaker, and then you hear silence because I'm just going to town and I haven't checked my mic. It's happened, happens to all of us. Just be mindful of it. And then when you're done, mute. Number 3, as an adjunct to number 2, are remain ready to check if you are muted physically or by the platform. Because you could click unmute and keep on trucking, but you may have a button or a switch on your mic headset that has muted you and no one can hear what you're saying. And then we'll get into that other element that drives everyone crazy. Just be mindful if you muted on your mic or you muted on your headset or if you muted on the platform. I stands for I am ready because I ran the wizard when I checked in. Either way, either Zoom or Adobe Connect or GoToMeeting, they all have a audio wizard that you run where you speak into the mic and listen to a sound, and it takes a silence check and sets everything equally so that when you go to talk, it isn't blaring or horribly quiet. If you have not done that, as you run through the Merca checklist, do it right away. C. Now this one, I feel like this is the most controversial thing I'll say this evening. C stands for can you hear me now? Creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates havoc. We mean it in the best of intentions, and I think it's almost ingrained in us as a society after all of those Verizon commercials. But it has struck me, at least this is my own observation, and I'd ask you to reflect on your own experiences and think about what's happened to you in a meeting where 8 people say something at one time, and then you hear a and someone will say, "Who was that?" And then there'll be an awkward silence. And then the person will speak just as that other person says, "Can you hear me?" And then this chaos ensues that spirals into 8 people talking again. Now, is there a solution? Well, I don't know that I contain that wisdom, but for the purposes of our conversation, I did create the ABCDs of audio issues. And again, presented with some levity, but with a grain of truth behind them. A, after rule 2, and you unmute, say, "Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be here at blank." And then give yourself a 5 count. By the time you say that, if they can't hear you, the group, the technical hosts, they will let you know. because you'll hear them say, "Oh, we can't hear you." Chat boxes, like the one at the bottom here, are your surefire way to get somebody's attention. All caps if necessary, with expletive shifts like the ampersand and the $sign and whatnot. To get a technical host's attention, I can't hear, I can't see, I can't whatever. The chat box is your friend. And the last one, D, dial in early. If you are a presenter for a town hall, we typically have a test run, usually the Sunday afternoon before the town hall. And everyone gets on and we all do a mic check and we all run through the program, the slides, everyone's slide deck is updated, who's going to talk when, and then we disperse. Calling in early rather than doing it 10 minutes beforehand when, oops, I got a new mic and it doesn't work, and you're a presenter, and then what do we do? There have been times where presenters have had to call into someone's cell phone, and that person who has a working connection has to put their cell phone up to the mic so that the presenter can give the material. And the way to get around that is to plan ahead. And finally, A, I'll bet you can remember what it is. Always remember rule 1. Mute your mic. Mute your mic, mute your mic. So, Mirka, mute your mic, unmute your mic, remain ready to check your mic. Run the wizard. Can you hear me now? Maybe not the best way to announce yourself, and there's going to be a delay, so give it a second. And then always remember rule 1. George Washington holding an eagle. Hopefully that will stick in your mind, my friends. It certainly did in mine. My good friend from Canada, the Right Honorable Dr. Atul Kapoor, said that a half-duplex mic is like a walkie-talkie. In that when you push the button on a half-duplex mic and talk, you're not going to hear anything else. And when you stop talking, you'll hear what's happening. You don't want that. You want a full duplex mic that will pick up and transmit at the same time. It's the best analogy of what kind of mic you need I've ever heard. So I've thanked him here and credited him here and see him here, and I hope he's sitting in his chair nodding his head. Get a full duplex mic. Do not use the built-in mic on your laptop, even if you've got a $7 million laptop, and do not use a stick mic, because those things will pick up every bit of noise, and that's just not a thing. Just don't. You can be muted without your consent in some electronic associations. Be aware. But you can be not that guy by just remembering rule 1. We talked about doodads. Doodads can cause trouble. Doodads are pretty and they're helpful, but if you're just trying to get business done, like, again, I'll point out the pricing committee, they have a very set agenda with 3 very busy people. They will get on, look at the stuff, have their vote, good night everybody, and done. So I don't need any doodads. I just need a place for them to look at stuff. When you are presenting, be mindful when it's your time to speak. We talked about that a little bit in America. Just be mindful. Do you give yourself a 5 count or a 7 count? I like to give a 5 count before I ask again, because sometimes people are running through the Merca checklist in their head, and they're going, "Up, is it my mic? Up, did I check here? Is my volume on? Is this right?" And a 5 count will usually get them where they need to be. Almost always a 10 count will. If you ask again and still get silence and they're still there, and then they go, "Oh, I'm here," good to go. Using platform tools to seek recognition. I want to point this out here on Adobe Connect, if I can find it, because I never seem to be able to find it when I'm a host. I'm not going to ask for, oh, here we go. Top page, you'll see something, top of the page, you'll see raise hand, agree, disagree, laughter, applause, etc. Using those tools to seek recognition is important. You'll notice my hand is raised. In certain meetings where people want to ask questions during a presentation, raising the hand is the best way to do it, and all three platforms have that. Sometimes associations can vote with a yes or a no. If you can't hear me, you might tell me to speak up. If I'm screaming at you like your fourth grade teacher, you can tell me to be quiet. And then the host can clear those statuses as they're answered. Be mindful that platform tools are also your friend and that the technical hosts are looking for them on the side as part of what they do if you need help. Javette, talk about Microsoft Teams. That question, I'll hold that one too for the last. Because my honorable friend Aaron Taggart, I think, has some experience with that. Also, on the right-hand side of the screen, I want to point out an item that appeared on social media a few days ago. Our good friend from California and NAP mainstay, Lorenzo Cuesta, who I'm sure most of us know, the vibrant man who does not have a quiet presentation in his body, posted this on his social media page. And I asked him if I could use it to demonstrate the things that people are concerned with and have trouble with online. And if our clients do, then we probably will also. And I won't read it for you. I'll simply ask you to take the slide deck at the end and review it. And if you are friends with Lorenzo on Facebook, he's always been a fan of answering questions if you have them. He always has for me. Very gracious gentleman. These are things that we need to keep in mind when we help our clients and when we help each other. I think I've touched on almost all of these things because he really does have his thumb on what worries folks. They're not really sure what button to push, especially folks who may be older than my generation, and folks in my generation sometimes get a little tech worried, whereas folks that are younger than my generation will just grab it by the horns and take off. So remember the platform tools. The right honorable gentleman from Mississippi absolutely detests this picture. This is Brandon Walters. He is the parliamentarian for the Electronic Unit Association of Parliamentarians and is my good friend. And during a visit to the DOMS workshop in Kansas City in November, this gavel photo was taken, I think, by myself in the presence of our executive director, who laughed with glee. I point this out because I don't want you to give yourself a headache, like Brandon was trying to pound into my head some things with a very large gavel, because sometimes, while you can only wrap it once to open and once to close, asterisk, and once to retain order, sometimes you want to pound the gavel on somebody's head to get their attention. And believe me, he got mine. To say the following things: log in early. Log in early. If there's an attendance cap, the earlier the better. The information that was posted tonight said that entry to the room would begin at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. Entry to the room. We knew that there would be a number of folks who wanted to be on. So the earlier the better. It's first come, first served, just because of the nature of our license, as we've explained. At one point, there were 97 people in the room and 151 queued. So as we move ahead, NAP will continue to adapt so that we can bring you the capacity for larger meetings that won't cost us percentages of our operating budget. But this has been an experience, a learning experience for all of us. And so as I present this material and you give me your feedback about it and we expand it so that we have a version 2 at some point, NAP will be better at delivering services and we'll be able to better explain it to one another, our units, associations, and our clients. So with that being said, ask questions of your technical host in advance. Mr. Martin introduced me this evening. He had some questions about his moderating role. We emailed back and forth about that. Just asking a couple of questions will probably put you on the right path. Headquarters is diligent. Oh, Skype and Connect. I won't forget Skype. Thank you, Virginia. Headquarters is very good about sending out notifications about when things are going to happen, as do the Honorable C.J. Cavan from Oklahoma, who is our social media guru, and the communications chairman, the Honorable Adam Hathaway from New Mexico. They blasted this presentation this evening and the one that will be happening next week with my good friend Larry Taylor from Oregon. And so we do our best to communicate as an organization out and down as best we can on every platform we can. And the headquarters team, even though they're working at home, is like a fine-oiled machine now, and we get a lot of communications about when things are happening. Just be on the lookout for it. Remember your checklist, MERCA, ABCD. And finally, earlier today I was at work, and I was a little nervous about my presentation. Most of you know how I get a little worked up. But just take a breath. If you have a problem, you can't hear, people can't hear you, just take a breath for a second and run through the basics. Most every time I personally, as a technical host, have helped someone through an issue, it has been either the machine itself has muted you or your mic or the speakers, or the platform is channeling the sound through speakers that you don't have recognized, or a microphone that isn't there. So we just need to change a setting or two, and then problem solved. Now, I will say that our good friend, our national treasurer, Carrie Dixon, had some really awful luck early in the biennium. Her internet just went out, and she had to pick up her laptop and run next door to a neighbor's house to connect to get back on. Those things happen, but it's not every day. Mostly it's something minor. That's how you keep yourself from having a headache. I am about 10 minutes early, but I want to give you some closing thoughts. As I mentioned, I don't approach this as a Zoom professional user. Again, I work for an eye surgeon, and we don't do telemedicine because the nature of retina ophthalmology is that Dr. K has to look at someone's retina through a special lens, and we can't do that over a camera. But my sister works for a neuropediatric clinic, and they do telemedicine all the time with Zoom and with Skype. Thank you for bringing that up. I love Skype because it's been around forever, and it seems like you can use it with your eyes shut, and you can use it as a phone, and you can put money on it, and you can also video chat. It's on every platform just about as basic software, almost like a Roku stick has Amazon Prime on it. So that's also a good point. Skype is easy, and just about everybody has seen it and doesn't need much technical skill to use it because it's just, click, 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 and you're good. Mr. Ball, that question will be addressed by President Allen, I believe, at the end of this meeting. The short answer is yes, but I know that she has announcements there too that I won't pull away from. Ms. Slayton, I did not say something about that. Mr. Dixon mentioned something about security, and I will mention something about Zoom bombing now that you have. Evan Lemoyne, our EAP president and NAP member, former member of our board, was attending a training session for municipal government officials in Rhode Island when suddenly the collaboration piece in Zoom was hijacked and racial slurs were drawn on the screen before their technical folks were able to shut that off, log it out, and re-log back in. So Zoom bombing is a phrase that's used when a hacker is able to come into your unsecured room by just having your meeting ID, joining, and then grabbing a hold of tools. For example, this draw thing here that I'm able to do things with and write things like you big lunkhead or what have you, and then log out. I have placed on my next slide a handout that came from Zoom yesterday by email about that particular element, and I have turned that email into a PDF that I'd like for everybody to take with them. It has some helpful links in it. The easiest way to get around Zoom bombing is to set a password on your room. And typically, for me, when someone uses my room for something, for example, the DC registered unit this weekend, I set the password to the president's name, who I believe is here. Yes, President Bishop is here. The password is her first name, and everyone knows her, so they won't forget the password. Valerie mentions that they've implemented password and a waiting room for all account types. So it is automatic that there's a setting that you can put people in a waiting room and only bring in the people that you know. I've not used that yet because that's something that's just happened, but that is a thing. Valerie, and I appreciate you mentioning that. Yes, Mr. Colston, I certainly will call you, sir, after this is done. If you use a form of multi-factor authorization, you can minimize Zoom bombing. Yes, that's also true. There are some platforms that would have you log in, and then you would use a authenticator on your handheld device or something that would send like a 6-digit password that you'd enter, etc., so that the platform knows it's you and the people therein know it's you. Okay. This electronic meeting thing, when I joined NAP in 2016, there weren't really platforms like this. And those of you who know I have convention relatives, my convention grandmother, Jeanette Williams, famously tells the story about how she took her RP exam in a desk in their basement with paper and a pen and the book and good luck. And she did all 5 parts at once. And now we've evolved into a way where we can collaborate and teach one another without feeling so isolated and having many opportunities to share not only experiences that you had while testing and credentialing, but also to introduce new material. Yes, the PDF is on the next slide. I just haven't gotten quite there yet. Security on Zoom. Yes, let me open mine. Hold on one sec. I'm going to just pull this up in the background here. While we're doing that, here's the Q&A box that I talked about. Here are, mention one other thing. Dr. Greg Goodwiller, who is a former district director and former member of the Commission on Credentialing, drafted a set of helpful rules for Zoom meetings, independent of what the authorship team may or may not have crafted or what's in the 12th edition or any of that sort of thing. He just used his expertise to craft pointers for folks. And I had told him that I would share this as widely as possible because I think it's very, very useful for you. So please take that, download that file, review it. The Zoom update email that I mentioned, I got that just the other day. I wonder if it has all my email address junk on it. If it does, that's fine. You all can, it does. It talks about meeting IDs. It talks about passwords for recordings, third-party file sharing, updates, how to preview messages, and they also have a blog that runs regularly. That's a good way. Keeping up with the Zoom blog is a good way to keep on top of security developments. Beyond that, the only security that I have used, Elena, is lockdown rooms on Zoom. I usually keep a password, or I only invite specific people, and use a random ID each time. Pros and cons of Skype and Zoom. I'll just say Zoom might require just a little bit more technical savvy to wander through, but Skype, like I said, it's almost like Yahoo Instant Messenger. Everybody knows how to use that. At least I say that colloquially, but almost like iTunes or turning Windows on. Skype seems like it's been in the background for so long. From my perspective, I feel like it would be very easy for practically any user to just click Zoom or Skype, enter a phone number, and click dial, and there you go. So, questions from the audience. I've been kind of just going through. I think I may have stole Larry's thunder there, just because I saw him going, and I just figured it would be appropriate to just keep on trucking. If we get questions that I can't answer, we'll save this list, and then, as we do with all webinars, we'll answer the questions and post them when we post the recording of this webinar for you to take with you. Also, my slide deck is there with my notes. I hope you find them useful. It, as I've said, is Microsoft Teams. Yes, Microsoft Teams. Aaron, I know you're on. If you could unmute, perhaps, sir, and allow me to avail upon you on the spot to just speak on what you might know about Microsoft Teams. I know you mentioned it last time, and I also am quite curious. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Aaron Taggart from California, is that right?
Originally from California. I'm currently in the state of Washington on a 50-mile island. So it doesn't feel like an island, but technically it is one. Microsoft Teams.
So you can help us with
right?
Yep. You're the Microsoft Teams
Yeah,
guy?
Microsoft Teams was originally designed for enterprise users and on their system called SharePoint. And basically Microsoft saw what everybody was using SharePoint for and created a generic template that turned into Teams. Teams is basically, they're trying to sort of get rid of Skype and turn it all into Teams, because Teams has so many more features. And it has the enterprise security, for those of you that were concerned about Zoom security. But where it really excels is that it integrates with the entire Microsoft suite: Word, PowerPoint, Excel. Not only can you see someone else and maybe share a screen, but you can have 50 people editing a Word document. What I used to do when I'm in a meeting is have 3 or 4 people taking minutes. And I might be one of the persons taking minutes, and I'm typing a minute, and I'll say the person in the back row, and then someone else knows the name of that person, so they'll change it as I'm typing. So you have a lot more advanced features. Microsoft has created a free version, and Microsoft is working on getting the ability to see everyone at once, because that's the big drawback when you're comparing it to Zoom, is that you can only see currently 9 people at a time, the last 9 people that spoke. Then there's something called Teams Live Events. So Teams limits to 250 participants at once, which is kind of, I think, too many people if everybody's trying to use a webcam. But Teams Live Events is something more like this, where we have 82 participants just viewing and interacting through Q&A. Teams Live Events can stream up to 10,000 people at a time, and it has very advanced production features, so that the producers can pull up a preview of what everyone will see, change things around, and let the next speaker know that they're going to go in 3, 2, and then switch the screen over by the producers as to which webcam is being shown. So there's a lot of advantages when it comes to producing webinars and collaboration on the Teams level. But it's also a lot more complicated.
Thanks, Aaron. I think that's an excellent overview. Bells, and I personally think that these all boil down to bells, whistles, and doodads. What do you need for your association to be able to conduct its business? And Teams certainly would be great if you're trying to collaborate on a number of different Microsoft products. But then again, a simple pre-conference call for a unit of 8 people who just want to get together and maybe share some tips for the registration exam. I think that's what I want my largest takeaway to be, is that I need to identify. Certainly, keep going.
So once you have Teams set up, meaning that the 50 people in your organization all have an account in the right place, it's very easy when you're in their little chat window to just click like Meet Now, and you could just be bored and you're just letting people know that you're available for meeting, and someone else will say, oh, so you can have like a one-on-one, or just, like friends, you could have a Teams for all your friends or your family or whatever, and it would very easily allow for that sort of off-the-cuff, spontaneous activity. The caveat, though, is once it's set up, once people have the app on their computer or their phone, and they've figured out login and they've figured all that out, then it's magic. It's getting to that magic part, I think, that requires a lot more work than Zoom, and Microsoft is also working on a simpler onboarding.
Thanks, Aaron. Ms. Gwendolyn wanted me to state my takeaway again. Make sure that you identify which platform your association needs. If there's only 7 or 8 of you in your unit, you probably don't need to invest in the cost of an Adobe Connect license. However, if you are Green Gavel and there are 130 some of us, then you probably need a platform like GoToMeeting that can handle the robust traffic that will generate. I wrote myself a note here. Don't let me forget TechSoup pricing and the pricing question. I say this trepidatiously, and I hope that you'll take it as it's given, and certainly not with disrespect. When one looks up pricing Adobe Connect, one gets contact pricing team, which means, in my mind, that they're trying to sell you something. A quick search will tell you around $1,500 a year. If the executive director's on, I would ask her exactly how much we spend. I think $1,200, $1,500 a year for our license with the 100 cap is about where we are. I don't know why that number kicks me in the head, but it does. Whereas if I go to Zoom and click zoom.us/pricing, it's all right in front of me. $14.99 a host a month, 100 participants. You can have a 24-hour meeting, a gigabyte of cloud recording, and then it goes up from there to $19.90 a month per host, and then you get into like enterprise solutions with 500 participants and all that sort of thing. But the pricing on one versus the other is transparent, and the other one really isn't. But as Aaron points out, the super advanced features in Adobe Connect that you may or may not have access to can move the price north quickly. One other thing, TechSoup is an organization that allows nonprofits to purchase license for software at a discounted rate if you have a tax-exempt ID. If your unit and association does, then I suggest that you go to the website. I'll type it here. Is the name. Just do it to search for TechSoup, and they can lower the price of the license that you would be able to purchase somewhere in the range of between 60 and 80%. So look into that. The replay will be posted on the webpage. I believe Mr. Hathaway's webinar on where your organization will be in 10 years is still in process. There was a technical issue with that one, and that was redone. So I'm sure that's forthcoming, Ms. Barbara. And this one, I would like to say we'd have up by the middle of next week. I think my time is nigh, and so I'll say thank you for your gracious attention. I'm stunned that all of you took the time on your Friday evening to listen to me yak for an hour and 7 minutes about meeting platforms, but I'm so honored to have done so. I'm glad you were here. If I can be of service to you, or if any of us on the tech committee can be of assistance to you, please reach out to us or your district directors or your association presidents or the board of directors or President Allen or Vice President Sims, Cindy Launchbaugh, the staff. We'll be glad to get back in touch with you as soon as possible and help you create the bridge during this strange time so that your meetings can continue. And we can keep this camaraderie, this crazy camaraderie about keeping order alive and well. And so with that, I'll say thank you very much and turn it back to you, Mr. Martin. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
To certainly give you our appreciation and our thanks for coming and giving us some information. It was really great from my perspective as I'm trying to both jot questions down and then watch you answer them as you're going through while you're still making the presentation. So I was very thrilled with that. One note for each one before we get some information, I believe by the president, that this chat will be saved as a text file so that we can create lists for answers. And I think in the chat, it was probably Monday. They're hoping to have that by done. So don't hold either one of us for that, but I wanted to make sure that that was a good option. And also a reminder of April 24th at 7 p.m. Central will be another free webinar, the electronic meetings that pass parliamentary muster. So Lawrence Taylor, PRP, will be bringing that presentation. So within that, I think I want to verify that my president may want to say something. I want to verify from her before I release everyone.
Yes, Larry, thank you. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their schedules to witness this presentation tonight. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Larry. Thank you to the tech team that came out in force tonight with Aaron, Carla, Leah, Paul, Lori, and Tamara. Thank you so much. And Larry did mention that we will have another presentation next Friday starting at 7 p.m. Central, that's 8 p.m. Eastern, and as you saw tonight, you will need to get on early in order to get in the queue because these sessions have been very popular. One thing that I wanted to mention, today we received notification from the Roberts Rule Association that in light of the fact that many organizations are needing to conduct business using electronic meeting due to the COVID-19 restrictions, that the Roberts Rules Association has made available ahead of the release of the 12th edition sample rules for electronic meetings. There'll be a link to the PDF that contains the sample news on the NAP website, and also to let you know that you'll be able to pre-order your 12th edition. That link will also be on the NAP website beginning at May 1st. So we want you to make sure that you pre-order your copies through us, and that'll be ready pretty soon, May 1st. Again, thank you to everyone for taking your time out tonight. Be safe. And we look forward to seeing you next Friday night. And if there is nothing else, thank you and good night.
Madam President, are we moving platforms?
Yes, please send me and Carla, Wanda, Leah, Tamara. Yes, the usual.
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
This is Paul. I think we can end the recording.